I took Tom under my wing when he was at his lowest. I taught him how to play the long game at the negotiating table, how to dominate the business world. Then his star rose. They say the first thing a blind man does when he regains his sight is throw away his cane. So, I wasn't surprised at all when I heard him telling a friend, "Martin, he's stuffy, boring, and, well, he's not getting any younger." I stood outside the private room, a tickle rising in my throat. I could just picture him, that handsome young man, narrowing his eyes and tossing off those words with a casual air. I was the one pushing it, after all, forcing a young soul to stay by my side for so long. Maybe because I'd been bracing for something like this, I only felt a flicker of grief. Mostly, it was the relief of a weight finally being lifted. The next step was figuring out how to get out of this arrangement, which had become twisted beyond recognition. With dignity, cleanly, unable to think of a solution, I walked to the restroom and lit a cigarette. I studied myself in the mirror. A well-tailored coat, hair styled with gel, but with 2 strands that had fallen out of place from my hurry, and fine lines at the corners of my eyes that couldn't be hidden. The longer I was with Tom, the more I noticed it. There was a 7-year gap between us. He was a blazing fire, radiating the glow of youth. I, on the other hand, had steadily crossed the threshold into my 35th year. My energy was flagging, and my stamina was starting to fail. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. A moment later, I stubbed out the cigarette and aired out the smell of smoke. Only then did I walk back to the private room and push the door open. The noisy chatter died in an instant. Only the music continued, wailing its heart out. I saw Tom immediately. He was lounging against the sofa, one arm draped over the back, with another handsome young man sitting beside him. Tom was like a leopard, using his arm to circle his territory. I'd seen that boy's file, Sam. Compared to his photo, his face in person was so fresh you could practically squeeze water from it. No wonder he'd been someone's trophy boyfriend before. The boy blinked, seemingly not yet understanding why the atmosphere had turned so strange. "Martin, Mr. Martin, what are you doing here?" Someone who knew me asked. Someone else fumbled to turn off the stereo. Not only did they fail, but they accidentally cranked up the volume. A rhythmic, tragically beautiful DJ remix echoed through the room. It only made the scene in front of me feel more ridiculous. A few of the drunker guys finally just yanked the power cord from the wall. The room fell silent. The atmosphere was awkward. It seemed my arrival always had this effect, out of place among the young crowd. I put on a pleasant smile and lifted my wrist. It's getting late. I finished work early, so I came to pick Tom up and take him home. As I spoke, I glanced at Tom. He seemed lost in thought, frowning slightly. The hand resting near the young man moved, covering Sam's eyes as he curiously sized me up. The boy pouted, leaning against Tom's shoulder like a spoiled child. Their intimacy was blatant, as if no one else existed. His silence gave me a clear answer. He's young, he doesn't know better. In a few days, I would be 35. An adult sense of decorum made me keep the smile on my face as I added, "But something just came up at the office, so I have to go back. I ordered you all some food. Drinking on an empty stomach isn't good for you." "Thanks, Martin." Hearing everyone else call me Martin, Sam chimed in with a bright, clear voice. "Thanks, Martin. Hey, that name sounds familiar. Are you the old man Tom was talking about?" After he said it, he acted as if he'd just realized his mistake, covering his mouth with both hands in an exaggerated gesture. His eyes curved into crescents. "Oh, sorry, Mr. Martin. I don't think you're as old as Tom said. You've still got that distinguished older man vibe. I think it's better if I call you Uncle Martin. Don't you think?" The boy was so young that even his malicious glee had a certain charm. These harmless attacks still managed to prick me with tiny specks of pain. But it was more bearable than before. I lowered my gaze, a little weary, and lit another cigarette. After a moment, I said coolly, "Tom, clear the room. I need to talk to you." The young man withdrew his hand, his gaze sweeping over my face with a dark, unreadable expression. He knew this was my final ultimatum. Perhaps he was genuinely afraid I'd do something to hurt the pretty little things surrounding him. He was silent for a moment, then stood up. Everyone, leave. Tom. Sam whined, not ready to give up. Tom glanced at him, his expression flat. Get out. The boy shot me a resentful glare before leaving the room with the others. When the door closed, I let out a deep sigh. I watched the young man's blurred silhouette through the smoke. He stood up, positioning himself about 3 steps away from me. Not too close, not too far. Faint, deliberate distance. Just like when we first met. He had no idea how far I had traveled to stand by his side back then. At that time, he was wearing clothes washed so many times they turned white. His head bowed as he washed dishes. His hands were swollen from the water, and in the winter, they would crack and bleed uncontrollably. I walked up to him. The boy looked up at me, his eyes flashing with the wariness of a small animal. I said, "Do you want to come with me?" Back then, I had just started my business, and my own finances were tight. But I put on a show of wealth, terrified he would see the desperation through my ill-fitting suit. Tom's pupils trembled, his chapped lips pressed tightly together. I said, "I'll pay for your tuition. You can focus on school." My younger self was reckless with words, believing, like my father, that love followed money. I casually placed our connection on the scales of finance, only realizing much later that this had twisted everything into a sordid transaction based on lust. My lack of experience meant I didn't realize he was wrestling with a painful decision. When I saw him smile at me, I was just smug that I could help someone I was attracted to. He signed a contract with me, a sponsorship, but it had long since morphed into a warped sugar daddy agreement. Only as I got older, after being knocked around by the world, did I slowly begin to taste the bitterness and humiliation in that smile. Pain, it turns out, can also have a delayed reaction. The rift between us grew wider and wider. Whenever I made money, I would subconsciously transfer half of it to the card I gave him. But I knew he never touched it. He was already making far more money than I was. The new wunderkind of his industry, a leader. I saw him in the news all the time. Tom. I heard myself call his name. Tom didn't react, just stared at me with those dark eyes. "This Saturday, our contract ends," I said, my voice gentle and restrained. "Until then, I don't want to see a repeat of this." The young man still didn't answer. As time went on, he grew more and more silent with me. We ran out of things to talk about. We were like polite strangers. Tom just said, "Smoking is bad for you. You promised me you'd quit." I nodded and put out the cigarette. He bent down, took out a tissue, dampened it with water, and took my wrist. He carefully wiped the ash from my fingertips. "The contract is about to end," Tom said softly. "Are you going to renew it this time?" I pulled my hand back. "No renewal. It's time for you to be free. This Saturday is your birthday." I shook my head and smiled. "At my age, you stop celebrating birthdays." He watched me with his dark, intense eyes. I hadn't been able to read his thoughts for a long time. After a suffocating silence, he asked, "You've been counting down to this day, haven't you?" His tone was calm, not an accusation, but a statement of fact. A fact he already knew. I nodded. Once the contract was over, we could finally escape this strange, twisted relationship. Go our separate ways. Whether the road ahead was rough or bright, it would have nothing to do with each other. Okay. As I expected, he agreed. Clean and simple. To be honest, when I first started counting down the days, I thought that when the contract ended, I would formally confess my feelings to him. I would lay bare my wretched, yet sincere, heart. But now I felt his happiness was more important. Just as he'd said, I wasn't young anymore. I shouldn't hold a free soul captive for my own selfish desires. Tom straightened the collar of my coat and asked, "Are you going home now?" I gestured to my phone. "No, something came up at the office. I have to go back." He gave a flat "Should I give you a ride?" "No, you've been drinking. Besides, I drove." He said, "Okay." He lowered his gaze. "I thought you were coming to get me." I turned to look at him. "What?" Tom repeated himself. "I thought you were coming to take me home, Martin." His tone was calm, no different than before. I didn't understand what he meant by that. When I got back to the office, I found my boss was still there. "Martin, what are you doing back?" He was holding his briefcase, looking like he was about to head home. I smiled. "Just gonna crash in the break room for a bit." My boss raised an eyebrow in surprise. He knew I owned a place nearby. "Oh, right," he said, slapping his forehead as if he just remembered something. He handed me a notice from his briefcase. "The company has a project in Africa. We'll probably need to send someone from the tech department. It'll be about 3 years. Ask your team first if anyone wants to volunteer." I glanced down at the paper. It was far, and the conditions weren't great. My team was full of young guys. I thought for a moment and asked, "Rwanda, are there leopards?" My boss replied, "Do I look like a leopard to you?" Couldn't help but chuckle. "I'll go." My boss was shocked. "What's gotten into you? Are you trying to get exiled because of a broken heart?" I said something like that. "No wonder you're sleeping at the office tonight. Once your name is on the list, there's no backing out. You should really think about it. Sometimes if you just talk things out with your partner, the problems disappear. Give me an answer by Friday. After all, Sunday is—" His phone rang before he could finish. My boss looked apologetic. "The wife's getting impatient. I've got to go." Sensing my relationship troubles, he scratched his head awkwardly, gave me another nod, and left with his briefcase tucked under his arm. I nodded, watching him go with a twinge of envy. Unfortunately, Tom and I were long past the point of being able to sit down and talk. The only thing we could do together anymore was make love. Every time I woke up wanting an embrace, all I found were cold sheets. He didn't wear cologne, so there wasn't even a trace of his scent, just the same shower gel that I used. Speaking of which, I'd never gotten a call from someone rushing me to come home. I'd always wanted a family like that. But Tom didn't seem like the type to do that either. A little disappointing. I lay down on the break room cot and closed my eyes. Just then, I received a text. An unsaved number sent me a photo. It was a picture of Sam and Tom together. Tom was wearing a hoodie, his expression blank but with a rare hint of youthful energy. Sam was leaning on his shoulder, smiling happily. The youthful vibe was overwhelming. I saved the photo, zoomed in, and took a screenshot, leaving only Tom. I had never seen Tom like this. When he was in college, I never dared to pick him up at the school gate for fear of damaging his reputation. It was the same even after he started working. I had been staring at my phone too much my eyes felt a little sore. I replied with thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, then blocked the number, turned off my phone, and went to sleep. I had a dream. I saw my 25-year-old self. An 18-year-old Tom was washing dishes at a restaurant. At 25, I had just finished my master's degree. The research project I led had a breakthrough, and I made my first big score. I was full of ambition, my eyes carrying the unique confidence and recklessness of youth. Even in an ill-fitting, inappropriate suit, people would just think it was a fashion statement. I burst into the back kitchen, reeking of alcohol, and called his name. The boy's hands paused their washing, and he looked at me, confused. Oh right, he didn't know me yet. He'd already forgotten the few times we'd crossed paths. I took a deep breath and introduced myself. "My name is Martin. I graduated from UCLA and got my master's at MIT. I know about your family situation. You can't earn enough for tuition washing dishes here. Do you want to come with me? I can help you." Such a boneheaded thing to say. I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall as I watched the scene unfold. I shouldn't have gone in. I should have just sponsored him anonymously until he graduated. Maybe then his impression of me would have been a little better. Instead of this, where I wasted 10 years of his life. For his first 18 years, he had a gambling-addicted father, a missing mother, and a sick grandmother he had to support. For the next 10, he was forced to live with a man he didn't like, living in humiliation. I looked longingly at his cold, dark eyes. I watched him press his lips together, lower his gaze, and finally say, "Okay." The last syllable trembled slightly. 10 years later, I'd lost all of that youthful bravado. The realization came too late. "Tom, it's time for you to be free." Tom didn't text back. I expected it, but I was still a little disappointed. God, the older you get, the more dramatic you become. I submitted my application to my boss. He tried to talk me out of it a few times, but seeing my determination, he reluctantly agreed. I transferred nearly 2/3 of my assets to Tom, the apartment we lived in together, and a letter of apology. I sealed them in an envelope to be delivered to Tom after I left. All I kept for myself was a freshly printed photo, the one of Tom in the hoodie, a slightly awkward look on his face. If I hadn't done what I did, he might have been happier. I tucked the photo into a fold in my wallet and buried myself in work. Morning, Martin. In early today, Martin. Weren't you on call yesterday? My colleagues started trickling into the office, chirping greetings at me. I paid them half a mind, then noticed two of the younger women in the department whispering together. I tried to get back to work, but their glances were a little too obvious, always flicking in my direction. I sighed and took off my non-prescription glasses. Is there something I can help you with? Martin, are you really almost 35? You don't look it at all, one of them asked. Really? I feel like I'm pretty obviously a middle-aged man, I said. No way. If it wasn't for the birthday wall, we would have thought you were in your 20s. I remembered that the profiles of employees with upcoming birthdays were posted on the company's birthday wall. They must have seen my birth date. The woman clapped her hands. Ferrari is a Ferrari, after all. Hey, Martin, do you have a partner? You must, right? Or are you married? Though I didn't know exactly what she meant, it was clearly a compliment. I rarely received such direct praise, and my face grew warm against my will. At her question, I thought of Tom's cold face and said softly, no. The entanglement that began when he was 18 should end now that he was 28. What? No partner? Hey, are you into guys or girls? What's your type? The girl's enthusiasm was overwhelming, leaving me at a loss. You two, it's work hours. Get back to work. Don't you know your boss is shy? Our manager's voice was like a godsend, rescuing me from my predicament. I gave him a grateful look. He held up a folder in his hand, gesturing for me to follow him. We got to his office. He asked, "How are the preparations going?" Almost done, I said. I had a plan. Celebrate one last birthday here in the country today, rest for a day tomorrow, and then depart the day after. My boss said, "There's been a situation in Rwanda. You need to leave tonight." Tonight? I thought of the text I had written but not yet sent. I felt an involuntary sense of relief. Yes. Okay. I nodded. I'll go home and get my suitcase. Have Chase give you a ride. My boss said. Chase is going with you. I turned and saw a young man standing by the door. He nodded at me. Hello, Chase. His expression was cool. Standing next to me, he was a head taller, with sharp brows, intense eyes, and a straight posture. He looked like a soldier. I'm 6 feet tall. So how tall was he? Hello, Martin. My male pride made me grumble internally, but I kept a smile on my face and shook his hand. After checking my luggage, I boarded the plane with him. We got to know the basics about each other during our conversation. From his posture, I'd assumed he was a veteran. I didn't expect him to be active duty. The government had a hand in this project, so it wasn't that surprising. A small issue came up. We need you to go there first to troubleshoot, the young man said, closing his eyes to rest. You look like a bit of a pretty boy. A lot of places abroad are into that. Stick close to me when we're out, don't wander off, and don't leave my sight. 35 years old, and a pretty boy? I was in a daze when Chase shook me awake. We're here, he said. After we got off the plane, I finally turned on my phone. I had several new texts from Tom. It's your birthday today. I'm waiting for you at home. The contract. It's your birthday. Consider the renewal my birthday gift to you. Where did you go? I called but you didn't answer. They said you went on a business trip. Where? Couldn't it have waited one more day? I saw the security footage. Is he younger than me? The last message was sent at midnight. Martin, happy birthday. You're free. We finally have no relationship. No relationship. The truth was, besides a few of his friends, no one knew about our relationship. I always tried to stay in the background, not letting him attend my social events, and I didn't attend his. To give him an out. That way, when the contract ended, he could move on easily. He seemed to have realized this, but for some reason, it made him angry. By the way, who's Tom? I heard Chase ask and shot my head up to look at him. He slung my small backpack over his shoulder and added under my intense gaze, "You said his name a few times in your sleep." It was a little distracting. I narrowed my eyes and chose my words carefully. "He's someone I used to be in love with." It seemed I could only be this honest with a stranger. When I looked into Tom's eyes, some words just wouldn't come out. What answer did I want to hear? What answer would I get? The cat is in a box that can't be observed. As long as you don't open it, the cat must be alive. My pride and his love would both still be intact. The money and love I had to offer, he didn't lack either of them anymore. A wind carrying fine sand blew under the hot sun, stirring my thoughts. A vast world was slowly unfolding before me. The tan-skinned young man stood with his arms crossed, his sharp eyes seeming to see right through me. But he just nodded slightly and said, "Let's go. We're going to be late." Troubleshooting was a technical job, and because it was a confidential project, my phone was sealed away in a box. I worked day and night. When I finally emerged from the facility, it was dusk. I washed off the sweat, changed into fresh clothes, and exchanged information with our counterparts in English, reminding them of the key maintenance points. My phone was dead, so I just stuck it in my pocket. As I reached the door, I nodded to them. After a period of intense work, a stretch of leisure time followed. I rubbed my temples. I had no energy or stamina for sightseeing. All I wanted now was to go back to my place and sleep like the dead. Suddenly, someone blocked my path. Unlike the others, he was a blonde, blue-eyed man. "Weren't we in Rwanda?" I blinked. He spoke quickly, leaning closer to my face as he talked. I caught a few keywords from his rapid speech. Sweetheart, gorgeous, free tonight. I struggled to pull myself out of my mental fog and asked in English, "How old are you? Besides, wasn't I a man?" 19. I said, "In 4 years, I'll be old enough to be your father." I said, "I'm 35. It was very obvious. My statement had the opposite effect. This foreigner was even more excited than before. I expected things to be more open abroad. I just didn't expect them to be this open. I rubbed my temples in frustration, trying to think of how to get rid of him. My brain had been fried in there, it was like mush now. "Sorry, he's taken." A low voice. Then, a hand rested on my shoulder. I turned my head and saw a familiar face. Chase. I hadn't seen him in a week, but he hadn't changed a bit. My tense shoulders relaxed, because Chase was huge and didn't look particularly friendly. So the foreigner stammered a few more words and left dejectedly. Before he left, he didn't forget to shove a business card into my hand. I held up the card, half amused, half exasperated, and examined it closely. This is pretty comprehensive. Height, weight, sexual position, even his measurements down to the centimeter. Chase glanced at it and scoffed. "Average. Let's go." "How are we getting back?" I saw him swing his long legs over a motorcycle. I swallowed the words I was about to say. I said, "Can I get a cab? I came specifically to pick you up." The young man's brow was furrowed, and he looked a little angry. I got closer and saw he wasn't angry. He was just looking at me. "I bought it here. It's cool. I thought you'd like it too." Chase's brows were low over his eyes, but somehow it made him look wounded. These old bones of mine. Hearing that, I knew I was going to have to risk my life to humor him. There were no speed limits here, no speed traps. He drove fast. I closed my eyes and wrapped my arms tightly around his waist. So fast, this speed. I felt like I was about to fly. Were we going to crash and die in the next second? "Relax. I've got you." The young man seemed to sense my anxiety. He patted the hand I had wrapped around his waist, reassuring me. When we got back to our place, the first thing I did was charge my phone. Chase stood with his arms crossed, watching me. After a moment, he asked, "Your family was okay with you coming here all by yourself?" I blinked, taking a second to realize what he meant. "Yeah, my parents and I aren't in touch anymore, and I don't have a partner. Besides, this project is important. I was the best person for the job." Chase said, such a do-gooder. I said with a helpless sigh, all right, I'm a do-gooder. Is there anything you want to eat? You can cook? His eyes lit up. Yeah. I glanced at the fridge. Not much in here. I'll have to go buy some things. Although, at home, it was usually Tom who did the cooking. You're exhausted. Rest. Tell me what you need, I'll go get it. I smiled. That would be fantastic. A cold wind. Tom knew the window was open, but he didn't want to close it. He was wearing only a thin, white shirt. He didn't close the window, as if holding his breath to punish someone. In front of him sat the birthday cake he had bought. He slowly turned his stiff eyes to look at the time. It was already 8 p.m., but Martin hadn't come back. He took out his phone again. Martin still hadn't replied to his messages. This feeling, his heart was suspended high in his chest, as if he had returned to that age of powerlessness. He was no longer the boy who had nothing, but whenever he was near Martin under his gaze, Tom always thought of his former self. Over the years, both he and Martin had changed. He was no longer the boy he once was, and Martin had grown more mature with the passage of time. He would look at him with those gentle eyes, full of affection. It always made him mistakenly think that Martin liked him, but he knew better than anyone that it was impossible. He was the one who was stuffy, boring, and seemingly unapproachable. He had heard the rumors people spread about Martin, that he liked young, beautiful boys, just like his father, even though Martin and his father had long since gone their separate ways. Tom knew what he looked like at 18, so Tom had always felt he was lucky that Martin had noticed him at that time. And because of that, Martin was willing to give him a piece of his time, a piece of his affection, a piece of his money, like finding a stray cat on the street and offering it a little warmth. He had always warned himself not to be won over by the sugar-coated bullets. Martin was so respectable. He had to control his heart, not to fall for him, so that when Martin decided to walk away, he wouldn't be in unbearable pain, pathetically begging Martin for a little more love, like a shameless beggar. After he started making his own money, he stopped spending Martin's. Martin had paid for his college tuition. He worked part-time jobs throughout college, all to pay him back, but he didn't dare pay it all back. He was afraid that if he did, his benefactor would think he was independent, lose interest, and go find another boy in more desperate need of saving. What then? That complex and twisted feeling. It made him stumble through 10 years with Martin. He was no longer an 18-year-old boy. He had his own achievements and confidence now, but he knew the insecurity was growing inside him. A mature, gentle, sincere, and handsome man would always attract those young, wild butterflies. Martin was a gentle and responsible person. Anyone who was with him would be happy, and he was already 28 years old. No one stays 18 forever, but there are always people who are 18. He was afraid. Would there be a next Tom? Someone who would win Martin's pity with a sad story, climb up using his sympathy, until they slowly took the place that should have been his. So many people wanted to do just that. After he saw Martin getting close with a young intern, his seemingly calm heart finally snapped. He found Sam. He knew Sam had been a trophy boyfriend for someone else before. He thought, he still had a decent face. He still had a decent status and money. He wanted to learn how to be a proper trophy boyfriend, how to please his benefactor. But the scene in front of Tom blurred. It seemed he had done the wrong thing again. His benefactor's interest was gone for good. He had personally taken the collar off his own neck. It was as if Martin was taking back everything he had given him. This feeling was even more helpless than before. He drew up a new contract. He would give all his money to Martin, as long as he was willing to keep him. Tom could give Martin all the money he had ever earned. Since it was a piece of paper that bound them together in the first place, wouldn't it be good to keep them bound with a contract now? But Martin never replied to him, leaving him in a hopeless wait. Martin had clearly said he wouldn't make him wait, because the contract was expiring. Did that mean all those sweet words became useless once the collar was removed? I don't know when I fell asleep. When I woke up, Chase was lying next to me. Right? The kitchen exploded yesterday. We were all exhausted after cleaning up. The bed Chase was supposed to sleep in was eaten by termites, so he had to squeeze in with me. My gaze swept over the sleeping man. He slept in a very disciplined way, lying on his back, hands folded on his stomach. I rubbed my temples, which were aching a little. I turned on my phone. There were countless missed calls from Tom. "Where did you go? Are you abandoning me? Like my mom and dad did. Martin, I'm begging you, let's talk. I've been waiting for you." I sighed. I could never refuse Tom when he pleaded. I put on a jacket, tiptoed out to the balcony, and called him back. He picked up almost immediately. Our time zones were different. Had he been waiting this whole time? "Hello? Tom." All I heard from the other end was a shallow breath. I had to speak first. "You were looking for me?"
Yeah.
His voice was thick with congestion. If you didn't know better, you'd think he'd been crying. "I just finished work. My phone was on silent. I just woke up." I explained subconsciously why I was only just now getting back to him. Then I heard Tom's hoarse voice. "I thought you weren't going to talk to me anymore." I let out a choked laugh. "Why would you think that?" Things between us hadn't gotten to the point where we'd never speak again. At worst, he would be the one to stop seeing me. "You went abroad," Tom said. I wasn't surprised. With Tom's resources now, it was normal for him to be able to find out where I was. "Yeah, for work." Tom was silent for a moment. He asked, "Can I still wait for you to come back? Not can I come find you?" I fell silent. I hadn't expected him to say that. That sentence created a disconnect with the young man who had said I wasn't young anymore. A young person's heart is fickle. I couldn't figure out what he wanted anymore. Why would he wait for me? Why, just as I was about to give up all hope, would he say these ambiguous things that could rekindle a dying fire? What did he really want? I couldn't make sense of it. I wanted to see his eyes again, to try and read something from them. But we were so far apart now. All I could do was face a cold phone. I took a deep breath, trying to inject a smile into my voice, to sound as casual as possible. "I don't think that's a good idea. What's wrong?" Before I could hear Tom's reply, I heard Chase's sleepy voice. I told him it was nothing. When I looked back at my phone, I saw the call had been disconnected. Perhaps this was the last time we would ever speak in this lifetime. The once heart-wrenching pain was now just a faint itch. I shook my head with a wry smile. Tom hung up the phone, feeling utterly defeated. In that instant, his stomach seemed to realize it hadn't been fed in a long time and began to cramp. He slowly curled up in the chair, staring at the cold food in front of him, his expression vacant. He had heard a man's voice. He remembered that voice. On the security footage, that was the man who had helped Martin with his luggage. Young, strong, handsome. He looked even younger than him. Had Martin picked up another stray on the street that caught his eye and brought him home to keep, and then give all his love to that person? He would be slowly pushed to the margins. He thought of the words he had said. "Martin, he's stuffy, boring, and, well, he's not getting any younger." Was he talking about Martin? No, he was talking about himself. Stuffy, boring, no longer young. He didn't want to admit it. He was resentful, he was bitter. He wanted to use those words to announce to the world that they should stop looking at Martin. He had nothing left but Martin. In this relationship, Martin could walk away at any time. Even as Martin aged, that restrained beauty became even more captivating. Everyone around him coveted him, would fall for him. But him? Even in a hoodie, the maturity in his eyes made it impossible for him to pull off the look of his 18-year-old self. Martin's affection for him was gradually diminishing. Martin was coming home less and less often. He would always look at him, about to say something, but then stop. Did he want to end the contract early? And then just abandon him so cleanly? No, don't even think about it. But what could he do? When he was in college, Martin would never come to pick him up. His roommate was dating someone from another school. When it was time to pack up for graduation, the girl drove to the school gate to pick him up. His roommate had a lot of stuff, so he helped him carry it out. "Where's your partner? We've never met him." "The senior year already," his roommate asked on the way. Tom had quietly, on his own, started telling people he had a partner. He lowered his eyes awkwardly and said softly, he's too busy. Busy for 4 years? Come on, admit it. You just made him up to ward off unwanted attention, right? The roommates burst out laughing, teasing him. The speaker meant no harm, but the listener took it to heart. At that time, he still held onto a fantasy. What if Martin really did love him? He waited at home for a long time that night. When Martin came back, Tom rushed to take off his coat and handed him a cup of hot tea. He looked exhausted and smelled of alcohol. It wasn't a good time to talk. But the young man pressed his lips together, pulled him onto the sofa, and while massaging his temples, asked, I'm graduating next week. Are you free? Could you come pick me up? When his eyes met those tired ones, he suddenly couldn't continue. He shouldn't be making demands. I'm sorry. I've been really busy lately. Martin knew what Tom was talking about. He looked at him with those gentle eyes and said apologetically, Congratulations on graduating. I'll transfer $50,000 to your card. Was he warning him for overstepping his bounds? He shook his head. No, I don't want it. Then what gift do you want? The drunk Martin seemed particularly easy to talk to. His voice soft as he drew out the words. A photo. The right to use one of your photos. That's enough, Tom said softly. Fine. He didn't love him. He'd accepted that. During graduation season, he could take that photo and tell his friends that he really did have a boyfriend, he was just really busy. He could deceive himself then. He could do it now. So he started avoiding Martin too. He didn't want him to say it, to end the contract. Until that day when he walked into the private room. Martin was wearing a black trench coat and rimless glasses, looking solemn, orderly, and gentle, like a dusty mirror, antique and elegant. Time had been exceptionally kind to him, a few faint wrinkles only added to his charm. Whenever they were in bed, he couldn't stop himself from wanting to kiss the corners of his eyes, wanting to see that handsome face flush with passion. Martin had come into his life at his best. But he had never seen what Martin was like at 18. What would he have been like? The center of attention in a crowd, with everyone at his beck and call? Maybe he had a secret crush on someone, trying to win their affection with a sincere gaze and clumsy gestures. He didn't dare to imagine it. He just stared at him. Martin had come to find him after all. The initial joy was quickly doused with cold water. He's this impatient. He'd rather show up in front of his friends, just to take him home and then say, he's ending the contract? Seeing the way the people around him were looking at Martin, the young man lowered his eyes and stubbornly blocked Sam's view. This was his person. No one else could look at Martin like that. He didn't dare to step forward. He didn't dare to ask. He didn't dare to explain. He hoped that Martin would ask him, what did you mean by that? But then he didn't know how he would answer. But Martin didn't ask. He watched the farce unfold with a gentle expression, as if watching children play house, resigned, indifferent, and casual. Tom, we need to talk. It was inevitable. Tom realized. The day he would be abandoned would come sooner or later. But in that moment, Tom stared at the flickering flame at his lips and said, smoking is bad for you. He was worried about Martin. His heart ached for Martin. If Martin really told him to leave, he should leave. Back home. Empty. Tom moved like a ghost through the dark apartment, walking to the closet where the white hoodie he had chosen was still hanging. He had sought advice from the former trophy boyfriend. How to look younger, how to dress, how to talk. All so that his benefactor's gaze would linger on him a little longer. But it had little effect. Sam had even talked back to his benefactor. He had fired the guy. Sam was furious, sneering at him to just wait and see. He wasn't afraid of anything. He only had Martin. But now, Martin already had someone else by his side. By clinging to him, Tom had driven him 1,000 miles away with that new person. The young man wiped his eyes. He hadn't cried in a long time. The scorching sun, the intense heat, the demanding work, it all kept me from sinking into grief. You need a break. Chase leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, frowning at me with disapproval in his voice. Even on missions in the military, I've never worked nonstop for this long. I gave a bitter smile and rubbed my temples. I know my limits. Doesn't look like it. You need a break. The young man shook his head, his voice stern. I said, I know what I'm doing. Only I can do this, and it's dangerous. I have to ensure 100% accuracy. It's New Year's Eve today. Yeah, isn't there a team dinner at the company? Why didn't you go? I asked. The young man raised an eyebrow and tilted his chin at me, as if to say, because of you. I smiled helplessly. When he tilted his head up, he looked like a proud ocelot. Chase spoke concisely. You need a cigarette and a drink. We need to talk to sort out your emotions. I raised an eyebrow. Is this part of your mission too? Chase looked at me with his bright, dark eyes and said, It's not a soldier's mission, but it is Chase's mission. With that, he held out a bottle of liquor. We need to talk. I had said that to Tom countless times, but when he was actually sitting in front of me, looking into those eyes, I never knew how to start. One shot. I tilted my head back and drank. Maybe I should have been braver, like when I was young, just rushing forward without a care in the world. I said. Then the confusion weighing on my heart could have been answered. It would have been gut-wrenching, but at least it would have been a clean break. But I was too much of a coward, so I kept dragging it out. My rational mind told me that things would resolve themselves sooner or later, but my emotions begged me, just one more day, I'll have it out with him tomorrow. Just one more day, maybe if we talk, he'll leave me, he won't be by my side anymore. I don't know if it was the words or the strong liquor. It burned a fire in my chest. My eyes turned red. I rambled on incoherently, and Chase just sat there, listening quietly. A second shot. It was summer, the first time I met Tom. The boy was squatting by some bushes, his head down, feeding a small cat. He was very thin, wearing an ill-fitting jacket in the middle of winter. His lunch was 2 steamed buns, with an occasional egg for a treat. But he still saved up money to buy cat food for the kitten every day. I was struck by his beautiful face and couldn't help but look for him every day when I passed by. He never noticed me, until one day I passed by again. But I didn't see the cat. I pretended to be a cat lover too, standing next to him and deliberately looking around, muttering, where's the stray cat that's usually here? I found a good home for it. The boy swallowed his bun, his eyes not looking at me, just quietly answering, it has a home now. Otherwise, feeding a stray cat is just harming it. I pressed my lips together and slowly hummed in agreement, desperately wanting to ask, what about you? Do you have a home? Why do you eat buns every day? I found myself wanting to know more and more about him. That was the beginning of love. The alcohol was kicking in. My head felt heavy, and the words were slurring on my tongue. Summer is hot with the sound of cicadas, but his eyes are so beautiful. Every time I look at him, it's like my whole body is submerged in cool water. But the way I went about it was wrong. So wrong. At first, I didn't realize it. By the time I did, it was too late. I was too emotionally invested. I'd started playing by the rules, afraid that change would bring about an earthquake. You're just afraid he'll leave you, Chase seemed to say. Actually, you're not sure if he loves you or not. I squinted and nodded. Having someone pinpoint my deepest thoughts made me stutter a little. Yes. After saying it, I gave a bitter laugh. After all, I'm really not young anymore. I offered him a cigarette. Mind if I? Go ahead. Today. Want to spend New Year's Eve with a third person? It's a time for reunions. After all, Chase said, holding an unlit cigarette between his teeth. I said? My brain froze for a few seconds. A colleague is coming over? That he you were talking about? I saw him standing at the gate when I got back. I'd seen his picture, so I knew he was looking for you. I brought him here. He's downstairs crying his eyes out right now. Chase dodged the lighter I offered, ducked his head, and lit his cigarette with mine. Want to go see him? The young man looked at me with a half smile, his eagle eyes sharp under his strong brow. Can't get any worse, can it? He had lost Martin, but he couldn't make himself truly disappear from Martin's world. He just couldn't. Tom squatted downstairs, wiping away tears, and it was his most hated rival who had brought him in, acting like the man of the house. This is as far as I can take you. I don't know if Martin wants to see you. It's New Year's Eve. I just want to be in the place closest to him." With that, he squatted down in the corner and started crying. He really had been spoiled by Martin. He had endured all that hardship before. But now, just being away from Martin for this long was unbearable. What was he crying for? Martin was right there, in a place he could find. He could rent a place here too. He could see Martin every day. Even if Martin liked younger men, he had been with him the longest. He and Martin were the most compatible. Worst case scenario, he'd get plastic surgery, a facelift, bleach his hair. He still had time. Tom? Through his blurry, tear-filled eyes, he seemed to hear Martin's voice. Martin seemed to be asking, "Why are you here? Why are you crying?" It must be a hallucination. After he had said such awful things, Martin would never come down again. He didn't listen to anything, just shook his head at the tall figure and said, "I love you. I can be your side piece. I'll pay to be your trophy boyfriend. We've been together for 10 years. You can't do this to me. Don't just leave without a word." It was like surrendering to his own heart, telling the victor, "You can take my love and hurt me with it as you please. I give up. I can't stop this heart from falling for you. I can't part with you gracefully." He saw the young man sigh and squat down next to him. He seemed to have been drinking. He drew out his words. "Did you even read the letter I wrote you?" Tom blinked, then honestly shook his head. He didn't dare to read it. It was still under his pillow. "I knew it," Martin laughed. "In the letter, I apologized to you. It wasn't just lust at first sight, me wanting to keep you. I really liked you, but I was too young at the time and I used the wrong method. No, you don't need to apologize. You helped me. I should be the one apologizing. Why did you never use the money I gave you?" Martin asked. Tom lowered his eyelids. "I can make my own money. I can't use yours. If I did, I would owe you too much. I wanted us to be even so we could be together as equals. I wanted to make a lot of money to confess to you. I saved all the money for you. It's all on that card I gave you. Saving it up, like a dowry." The other man laughed. Tears seemed to be streaming down his face. He cursed. It wasn't clear if he was cursing himself or Tom. "I should be the one apologizing. The person I was talking about that day. It was me. All those tricks the trophy boy mentioned, I've never done any of them. I was afraid you'd be snatched away by someone else. I hate myself. I don't have a talent for being a trophy boyfriend. I'm stuffy, boring, and all I know is how to work hard," Tom said, his head down, wiping away tears with a hoarse voice. "I'll get better. Can you let me stay by your side?" He saw Martin seem to nod. He saw the young man take his picture out of his wallet. His brain, which hadn't slept for days, was reeling from the impact. Tom's face was flushed, his eyes sparkling as he looked at him. Before Martin could say anything else, Tom shoved the card he was holding into Martin's hand and mumbled, "I think I'm going to pass out." This wasn't the time to talk about how hard the journey here had been. With that, he closed his eyes and really did fall over. This time, Tom could pass out without a worry, fainting into Martin's arms.